Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America.
All right, checking to see, do we have Dr. Perbola? Oh, hold on. Holding. Do we have Dr. Perbola?
Yeah.
And do we have Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
All right, great. Can we please have a roll call?
Mr. Burke and Mrs. Bennett are absent, so Mrs. Eckert,
Here.
Mr. Franco,
Here.
Mrs. Goebel,
Here.
Dr. Osherick. Here. Dr. Perbola,
Here.
Mr. Farr. Here. Mrs. Arnold.
Here. All right, let the record show that we held an executive session prior to tonight's meeting for personnel matters related to specific staff. Mr. Superintendent, do you have any remarks for us?
Of course I do. Thank you. Good evening, board, and good evening, Tunkhannock Tiger community. I'd like to start out this evening by reminding everyone that our theater department's fall play will kick off tomorrow evening and run through the weekend. This year, our talented students will present a play entitled Midsummer Jersey. From what students have told me, it's a mix of Shakespeare and Jersey Shore. I'm certain it'll be an entertaining show. It'll run at the Intermediate Center tomorrow night, Saturday night, and Sunday afternoon at 2. So everyone listening, please consider supporting our theater department this weekend. A big challenge that we're facing right now is a shortage of available teachers, right? And it's not something that's unique to Tunkhannock. In fact, as of late April, there were 5,500 teacher openings in the state of Pennsylvania. 10 years ago, as soon as 10 years ago, what was the norm? What was the average number of people getting certified to teach each year in Pennsylvania? Was 20,000. Last year, 5,000 new teachers were certified. So the drop-off is really a supply in labor. Sadly, we have some teachers that are dealing with serious medical issues right now. And I know that our entire community cares a great deal for our teachers. They really do. And we all hope and pray that our staff and our teachers can overcome their difficult health situations. But I mean, honestly, it's been difficult to find qualified teachers to fill in temporarily, especially when we have very little to no notice that a staff member has to step away quickly due to a serious health concern. We will be filling another of those open positions with the approval of the personnel report that we are addressing one of those open positions here today. I fear that, unless the state steps up and provides some kind of incentives for college students to go into education, that the teacher shortages, it's just going to compound. It'll grow and grow and grow. I'm very aware of the concerns that, parents have shared with our school administrators, and I'm going to tell you, in fact, I agree. I agree with most of it. I certainly appreciate the patience and the confidence that our school community has shown to our school administrators as we continue to work on solutions to really combat our staffing shortages. On a positive note, we've recently received our student academic growth report from the state. Our students excelled. I'm thrilled to share that the vast majority of our students academically grew significantly more than one grade level last year. I already knew that our classroom teachers were outstanding, but this report just reinforces that. Additionally, our building level academic scores improved in each of our schools. Now, the PA Department of Education assigns a building level score to every school that performs state testing. Ours are very strong. For the second year in a row, our intermediate center's building level score was at an all-time high. Congratulations, Ms. Cauldron, and congratulations, everybody. All of them went up. I'd like to publicly compliment our teachers, our paraprofessionals, and our school administrators for always putting our students first. I'm in awe and very appreciative of the strong work ethic and academic focus of our staff, and it's just an absolutely great job. As I wrap up, I just want to remind everybody that all students will be dismissed early on the day before Thanksgiving. And finally, good luck to our student athletes as our winter sports season starts tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Superintendent Doherty. All right, we're going to be opening the floor to public comments on agenda items only. So if you have comments to make on items that are specifically listed in the agenda, you can come to the podium. You get 4 minutes to comment in total, and well, you know the rules. They're in the book. I'm not going to read them because if I keep talking, I'm going to cough more, and you don't want to hear that. So, do we have any public comment? It appears we do.
On tonight's agenda, I'm looking here, the football startup money has gotten way big from what it used to be. How does that go back into, it's paid out, it looks like $3,600 a game now. It used to be just several hundred. Now it's big money. How does that get back into the books, whatever, or what does that go to? That's the first thing. Personnel reports, I asked this before. How come some of them have money and some of them just say per CBA? Why can't they all have the money number so the people know? I see seminar sign-ups are starting to slip again. And in the back for the Methodist Manor, I guess it is, you got it working on an agreement for disasters. Now, does that, for in this building in the gym, in the wintertime, I'm assuming if they come here for a disaster, it'd be because of a power outage. But this building is not self-sustaining. Your middle school is, its generator will keep the building sustained, but this building will not. Even with converting to gas, you still had to have electricity to run the blowers to get the heat and the electronics in all these gas units you've put in. And then the last thing in this part, today on page 142 is the list of items that was done for the tennis courts. I'd like somebody to show me where there was gravel and drainage put into the tennis courts. My belief is there's still not any drainage under the tennis courts, and I've got some pictures, I don't have them here tonight, and then they didn't raise, there's no fabric put in between the dirt and the material that was put in, and the final height of the tennis courts is still low. When it rains, it washes from the grass, washes down across the tennis courts. I don't give them a very long time, depending on the weather. That's my beginnings for on tonight's agenda.
Do we have any other public comment on agenda items? Seeing none, we'll move along. Item 5. The enrollments are there for your reference on pages 6 and 8. So I hear papers fluttering. 6 to 8. So we had an uptick, 3 new students. Any discussion on enrollment? All right, hearing none. Moving along to item number 6, approval of minutes. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Eckert?
Yes.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Dr. Osherik?
Yes.
Dr. Pravola?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. Business and finance, do we have a motion for items 1 through 6?
Motion to approve? Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Eckert?
Yes.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Dr. Osherik?
Yes.
Dr. Pravola?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. Superintendent's report.
I'd like to recommend a resolution be adopted approving the personnel report as presented.
Motion to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? I'd like to thank the administrative team in the buildings and at the central office. I know that you guys are jumping through all kinds of hoops right now, trying to make all the ends meet and make sure all of our kids are getting what they need. And I know it's not a small lift with the different people that we have out on sabbaticals and other emergencies or other situations. So thank you for struggling through that every day. If there's no other comment, we'll have roll call. Yeah, we'll do that.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Dr. Osherik?
Yes.
Dr. Perbola?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckert?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes.
With that, I would like to acknowledge the retirement of one of our staff members. I would like to congratulate Stacy Wernes for her years of service to our school district. You just approved, I know you know this, but her retirement was listed on the personnel report. Number 2, I'd like to recommend a resolution be adopted approving the following conferences as follows.
Motion to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Dr. Osherik?
Yes.
Dr. Perbola?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckert?
Yes.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. Committee reports. I don't believe we've had any committee meetings since our last board meeting. Do we need to schedule any? Okay, seeing none for that, we'll move along to unfinished business. There's none of those either. So new business, items 1, 2, and 3 are there for everybody's review for the right to know listing, the TASD visa account, and the summary of the ESS teacher substitute fill rate. Any discussion on any of those items? Seeing none, we'll move along. Item 4, motion to approve an agreement with the Luzerne Intermediate Unit for community and school-based behavioral health services as presented.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Dr. Osherik?
Yes.
Dr. Perbola?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckert?
Yes.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. Item 5, motion to approve an emergency transfer agreement with the United Methodist Homes, Tunkhannock Manor as presented.
Motion to approve. Second.
Any discussion?
So can I ask, Paul, was that, because Bill asked, did they pick the high school for a reason?
I don't know the answer to that. I'm going to, Security Director Seberg worked with United Methodist on this. We approved this last year, is that if they have a disaster, that we're not going to make them be outside.
Right, yeah.
We're trying to give them a safe space, and Director Seberg can speak differently, or speak about it, but it's not designed to be anything long-term. This is
Right.
designed to be, if there's an emergency, we're going to house them.
Good evening, everybody. The Methodist home there, they came to me and asked, it would be a short term, if they lost power, if they lost water, if they'd be able to bring their residents to us for a short amount of time. So
Is there a reason the high school?
I just think that they're familiar with the area and they thought it would be a good setup with the parking to get their residents close to the facilities.
Okay. Thank you.
And there's no steps?
Yeah, it's one level.
If we didn't have, for some reason, if we did not have power there, there's nothing in here that would preclude us from just having them go to the IC where we could have generator power.
True.
Yeah,
True.
so, okay. Okay, any other discussion? Good catch, Bill. Roll call, please.
Dr. Perbola?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckert?
Yes.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Dr. Osherik?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. Item six, motion to approve a memorandum of understanding between law enforcement authorities and TASD as presented.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Eckert?
Yes.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Dr. O'Sherrick?
Yes.
Dr. Perbola?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. Item seven, motion to approve a student teaching agreement and a principal internship MOU as listed with Eastern University and Wilkes University.
Motion to approve?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Eckert?
Yes.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Dr. O'Sherrick?
Yes.
Dr. Perbola?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. Motion to approve an overnight field trip as listed below. They're A through F.
Motion to approve.
Second?
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Eckert?
Yes.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Dr. O'Sherrick?
Yes.
Dr. Perbola?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. Item nine, motion to approve applications for payment as listed. They are there A through E.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Any discussion for those items?
And just to recall, this is all out of the budget, right? Everything's accounted for?
Yes, that's correct.
I thought God was talking to me. Any other discussion?
No, I don't, is there, I mean, I don't, Mr. Shapolsky's not here tonight to answer the tennis court questions that Bill
I
had.
could try.
What?
I mean, I certainly don't mean to be confrontational. I have all the respect in the world for Mr. Widener, but I disagree about the drainage. I mean, and the reason I'm saying that is I actually saw the drain tile in the sub. I mean, I witnessed that. I mean, to say I'm an engineer, I would never say that. But I mean, I physically saw them put the gravel down and saw the drain tile go in. I mean, so I could say that. I mean, Mr. Shapolsky obviously would be able to speak to that more than I could. And I wouldn't say anything if I had not seen it. But I actually saw that because we actually ended up putting in more drain tile than was called for.
Okay, good. And it's good, because the tennis courts was, that was a year ago or a year and a half ago that we had the parents out here asking us to
Yes.
do tennis courts, so.
Correct. We had a very successful tennis season. I mean, the water does move right off the courts when it rains.
The water what?
The water does move right off the courts when it rains.
Okay, that's great. I'm glad we got that project done, because that was clearly a parent request, or parents'
Yeah,
request, so.
absolutely.
It is well utilized in the community as well.
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
So,
Which I think was their point.
Yeah.
When they were saying about the community, yeah. That's great.
any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Dr. O'Sherrick?
Yes.
Dr. Perbola?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckert?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. Item 10, motion to approve a new postage machine lease agreement with the Postage Pros Plus through Quadient Leasing as presented.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Goebel?
Yes.
Dr. O'Sherrick?
Yes.
Dr. Perbola?
Yes.
Mrs. Eckert?
Yes.
Mr. Franco?
Yes.
Mr. Farr?
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold?
Yes. Item 11, motion to approve the adoption of a resolution to commit resources on the financial statement for the fiscal period ending June 30th, 2024, as per Government Accounting Standards Board Statement Number 54, GABS 54, in the amount of $9,900,000 for district-wide capital improvements.
Board, if you recall that every year we have to assign a portion of our fund balance. So this is not saying that we're going to spend actually anything. This is just saying that the portion of our fund balance that we have to assign, that's what it's being assigned to. This is not approving any spending other than for budgetary purposes, we're assigning it to there.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you for answering the question I was going to ask.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Dr. O'Sherrick,
Yes.
Dr. Perbola,
Yes.
Mrs. Eckert,
Yes.
Mr. Franco,
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel,
Yes.
Mr. Farr,
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold.
Yes. Item 12, motion to approve the adoption of a resolution for the 25-26 budget not to exceed the Act 1 index of 4.8%, which I believe was 3.8 something, something, something
It's
mils.
like 3.94,
Yeah.
yeah.
So this is not passing a budget, this is saying that whatever we do next, March, April, May, June, that it will not be any higher than this amount.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any other discussion?
My question is this, once we do this vote is telling us that we will not exceed the 4.8%. And there's no changing that, depending on whatever costs come in, whatever budget things that, we're looking line items, administrative, and they're extremely high. Correct? There's no changing this.
No, we would, if we were to go above this, we would have to apply for an exemption to the state, and there's like certain qualifications, there's only certain reasons to do that. One is building construction, one is increased special education costs. Can't think of the third one off the top of my head. There's three, but no, I'm not sure we would qualify. We may, I would have to examine that. But, the board could certainly table this, and I could put it on again in December, because we would have to file paperwork with the state if we were seeking an Act 1 exemption.
I just, I don't want to raise taxes at all if we can help it, but I know there's going to be costs and things like that, so I was just asking a question.
In full transparency, we're looking at significant healthcare cost increases for next budget cycle. We've, as everyone knows, we're in the healthcare trust with other districts, mostly from Luzerne Intermediate Unit. And the cost is, we're looking at probably a 16% increase to our healthcare costs, which for us alone, if that passes, is over the equivalent of 2 mills. That's significant. Yes, 4 mills is going to be tight. With our contractual obligations, it's going to be a tough budget cycle. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Right now I'm looking at it from the 10,000 foot mark, and we're not kind of down in the weeds and the details yet, but the big items we know are coming are significant.
And Paul, if I can ask, the healthcare cost increase, is that a reason for us to go outside of the index?
Yes, I'm looking at it right here. I could just confirm that, yes, because Mrs. Egan just pulled it up on the PD website. It's special ed expenditures, retirement contributions, so PSERs, healthcare costs, emergency and disasters, and school construction projects. But if we pass this, that would be negated.
So we wouldn't have the opportunity to go beyond this once you pass it, is what you're saying?
That's correct.
Do we have a figure on how much anticipate our healthcare costs to go up for next year? An estimate?
What the amount is?
Yes.
If this passes the way it's presented, it's $650,000.
That's 2 mills, right?
Yep. Yes.
A little more.
Is there, I don't know if you know this or you can say this or not if you know, is there a driving factor behind that?
Yes. It's GLP-1 medications, basically your Ozempics and your Wegovy's. The trust does not effectively manage the prescriptions of those.
And they're used for weight loss?
It's being used for everything because it's not being managed by the trust. So we're part of a trust that has bylaws and it oversees. And really, it's supposed to be strength in numbers because you have more people involved, it should drive the cost of healthcare lower. But according to the way that the trust is run right now, and we might have to look at exiting the trust because basically it's not managed, right? So you have like GLP-1s, which we know have been utilized for years for diabetes. Like that would be somebody that would qualify. But apparently, the way it's being managed now is if someone gets a prescription that may not have a pre-existing condition, they're just issuing the prescription anyway. And right now, I know the healthcare trust alone, just in prescriptions, is, and the fiscal year's not over, but is over over $2 million over the budgeted prescription amount for this year. And it's really GLP-1s, drugs, that are driving that.
And that's, I mean, for clarification, that's not just Tunkhannock teachers. That's
Oh, no, no, no.
all staff that are in this, on healthcare plans in this trust amongst all the districts.
It's not, yes, right. I mean, and by no means are we saying take away the
Yeah.
drug if it's required for
Yeah.
the ailment, but I mean, it's got to be managed effectively. And right now, that's not happening within the trust.
So so the way we want to think about this is, like, the trust is what's in our contract, that's our healthcare plan. It's, as it stands right now, it's 650,000 extra next year for us, extra.
We
Right,
actually
so,
offered 2 plans.
What?
One is Geisinger,
But the Geisinger plan we offer is not part of the trust.
right.
yeah, but maybe offer that as well as the health.
And we got, so our trust healthcare, we were notified an increase of about 16%, just shy of 16%. Geisinger told us it'll be 4%.
So the 16% is the $650,000, right?
Yes,
So the healthcare cost increase next year is 2 mils.
Yes.
And this is 3.8 something mils.
yes.
So
We're
if
saying
we
that-
cap it at 3.8 something mils, the issue is that we can't even get through healthcare and our contractual agreements.
Right, I mean, if the board recalls, this year, the board chose to pass a 0 mil budget, which was a deficit budget of about 2 mils.
Yep.
So that money still has to be made up somewhere, right? So I think that we're doing a pretty good job this year of making sure that I make up that 600,000 from the deficit, but that deficit still exists in every subsequent budget.
Yep.
So next year, we're already starting 2 mils down. 2 mils more in healthcare, salary and, raises, contractual obligations on salary, there's another 3 mils. So there's 7 mils right there that we know are coming.
Yep.
So what happens if we ultimately do not, what is the advantage of passing this, saying that we will not go above?
It's just the time of year if you were not going to go, we have to either pass this, I think it's by year end. So, I mean, this could be kicked to December. We have to either pass this or apply to the state for an Act 1 exemption. So this is historically the time of year that we pass this. I mean, because it gives us, we try, you know, with the reorganization meeting in December, we try to keep the December items to a minimum.
If we pass it tonight, we won't be able to apply it to the state for the health care costs.
That's my understanding. I don't know that. So, John, that question was it?
I couldn't hear.
Yeah, if we pass this, then we can't apply later to go above the Act 1 exemption.
That's correct.
Yes, correct. I mean, we could definitely table this and we could revisit in December. That's the board's decision. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I'm nervous about next budget cycle.
With the data, we don't have any different data. We're gonna have the same conversation in December. No data is going to change in December, right?
No. I mean, other than I might be able to get more details of what our budget's gonna look like. Now, granted, that's very, very difficult to do.
Right,
Because staff don't have to tell us about retirements until,
Yeah.
60 days prior to the end of the school year, like, so,
Well, and even with that, we have to, like, acknowledge the fact that you have done a great job replacing the people that need to be replaced and taking staffing reductions for our costs, like, so you.
right, and
We can't do that forever.
We've done
without
some,
cutting programs.
we've done some significant, attritional reductions. In areas where we had a lot of staff, because again, with declining enrollment,
Yep.
also comes, the opportunity to not replace when someone retires, like and that's very difficult to do at the primary center where classes are self-contained. But at the high school, it gives you a lot of flexibility to
Yeah.
do something like that.
Well, on one hand, I don't think in all the years I've been on the board, we've ever gone near, you know, I think the highest we've ever had is a 2.
And I'm going to tell you, even if we apply to go above the Act 1 index, that doesn't mean you're obligated to go
Right.
above the Act 1 index. Right, John, you correct me if I'm wrong, but there's no harm in applying for that.
That's correct, you're right.
That just keeps, the way I look at it is that voting this down keeps our options open and not necessarily have to raise the taxes to 3.8 mil or higher.
You're correct.
Yeah, we could vote this down and then request from the state to go up the healthcare amount, and then we could still not pass that much, because something could happen.
You could still choose to do whatever you want come budget time.
Yeah.
It just opens the door, that's all.
Yeah.
Well, it's just interesting to me that we're sitting here talking about the idea of potentially having to look at the highest tax increase since I've been on the board in 2015. And a big fueling factor of that is, you know, one specific class of medication. That's kind of wild in my mind, but.
Like, and I'm going to tell you that every district's going to struggle with this, that are part of the trust. And there was a lot of animosity at the last trust meeting with districts. And really, it's not sustainable the way it's being managed. And everyone's going to be looking at potential tax increases because of a drug. You know, not because it's a student programming issue, which is easy. You know, nobody wants a tax increase. It's easier to stomach when it's something going to students.
On this, and I don't want to keep beating this dead horse, we can move along, but like if the factor of this huge, like $650,000, that's 6.5 teachers. That's the number we use. Like, it would be.
Yeah, I mean, it's about 5 teachers with benefits.
Okay, 5 teachers with benefits for this healthcare increase. And it's because it's not being managed. It's just, if you get the prescription, you're allowed to have it. What would be the procedure to have that changed? Like, can we advocate with the trust or somebody to like?
A couple things. That is happening now. We are allowed, and we looked into this a little bit too. We could pass, we could enter into an MOU with our unions and include it in their contracts. So it could be managed just by us too. I think that would be difficult.
Yeah.
But there's that possibility that could be managed just for one district. But it is, you know, maybe the talk about leaving the trust is not a bad thing. And now that is not an easy thing to do legally. But I mean, it might be worth exploring, because having a family plan one family plan costs the district, well, in total, it's $36,000 for a family plan going into next year on the HMO. Like on the PPO, it'll be like $40,000 for a family plan. It's not sustainable.
No. What?
You know, between Peacers, so if we have a first-year teacher that comes on board, they happen to have a family. So even bachelor step 1 is $60,000, right? Which is great. We have very competitive salaries for our teachers, and they're worth every penny. I will always say that. We have great teachers, and we have competitive salaries. But if somebody has a family, now you figure it's not $60,000. It's 60 plus the 40 for healthcare, plus the 30 cents on or 40 cents on the dollar for Peacers. So all of a sudden, like, that is a cost of $120,000, $130,000 per staff member. And as salary increases, I mean, a staff member really could be near the end of their careers, is on the books for a couple $100,000.
Right. Well, what say the board? Do we want to continue? Do we want to vote on this? Does somebody want to make a motion to table it?
if I could just, I kind of agree with Paula. I mean, I don't know what different data points we're going to have. I mean, listen, we look at when we look at considerations of healthcare increases, we're talking usually 8 to 10%. And that's probably on the high side.
That's on the high side, yes.
This is 16%, and it's not getting any better. So these costs are unsustainable. And I just want to remind the board one other thing. Years ago, we talked about the attritional savings. Well, we're done. I mean, we are bare bones, in my opinion, and Paul weigh in, but we're kind of getting to the bare bones. There's not a lot of places we can cut staff. The next thing that our board is going to have to do is look at cutting programs. And I know nobody wants to cut programs.
Yeah, there's going to be hard discussions in the very near future about class sizes, about course offerings, about extracurriculars, because it's getting challenging, right? So even last year, and we passed a very strong budget, and we're very healthy financially, and I want to make sure that, as the leader of the district, we remain healthy financially. But like last year even, I told all of our building level principals and security and IT, like, do not ask for 1 penny more. You're not getting it. I haven't gotten to the point where I said, take 10% or 20% off your budget and figure it out. But at some point, that may happen. They're just going to be the hard realities. At the primary center, we're very fortunate to keep our class sizes, around 20. They're like 18 to 21. And is that feasible moving forward? I don't know the answer to that. I would hope so. I wish it could be, but it's probably not reality as we move forward. It's not an easy position, and again, it's not something we're just facing. Everybody's going to be facing it, especially with a situation with healthcare when certain very costly things are just not being managed effectively by the trust that we're in.
So I think we had a motion to approve it. I don't know if you can change the motion.
Well, you can have a motion to approve and then vote no,
Okay, that's where I think we are.
if
I think
that's,
we have to
if that's
vote,
where we're
that's
at,
what we-
as a group, individually as we go through and vote. I don't think we need to change the motion. Have we exhausted the conversation? We good to move forward with the votes? Okay, roll call, please. This is a yes vote would be to pass adopt this resolution.
Basically, if this doesn't pass, next month I would bring back another motion that says, motion to apply to exceed the Act 1 index. Because that's something the board would also need to take action on, to submit that application. To seek an exception.
So we have to pick a lane, either this month, or we have to pick a lane, right? You got to do one or the other, is what you're saying?
Correct.
You have to vote on one direction.
I gotta take some kind of action by, very soon.
So I would say at the next board meeting, then let's bring forward whatever data or whatever information, or in case anything changes, then bring forward another one of these.
Okay.
And one to vote for the
Got it.
application of the
So
exception.
there'll be two motions on the next board meeting.
Yes.
One that's just like this one, and one to apply to exceed the Act 1 index.
Yes.
Got it.
Okay, so we have a roll call, and as a reminder, yes would mean that you want to approve the adoption of this resolution saying that we will not exceed the act. A vote no would be that you essentially want to have the scenario that Superintendent Doherty was just talking about, where we have both options on the table in December.
President Arnold, should we table this? If we're going to bring both of them back in December?
I would table it, this way you can bring them both back, because if it votes no, you can't bring it back, because we're voting that we're not accepting it.
Well,
So that's already started.
I'm fine with tabling it. I mean, it's the same thing, essentially,
I think if you vote no, I can bring it back again.
Yeah, it can come back.
As long as you're within the timeline of the budget process.
Yeah.
Well,
So
do
as
we
long
have-
as we don't
So
exceed
the
when I
question
have to
is-
submit it.
Is the rule that once you have a motion, you have to vote on it? Because if not, we could just table it.
No, you could table it.
You could make a motion to table it, somebody else would make a second that motion, then we'd vote on the motion to table it, and if it passed, then we would just move along.
I make a motion to table it.
Okay,
Second.
second. Oh,
Okay.
Laura seconded, all right.
So now we've got a motion to table this, and a second. There is no discussion on a motion to table, so could we get a roll call for tabling?
Dr. Perbola,
Yes.
Mrs. Eckerd,
Yes.
Mr. Franco,
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel,
Yes.
Dr. O'Sherrick,
Yes.
Mr. Farr,
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold.
Yes. So it will come back next month, and also we'll come back with a
Yes.
motion to apply for.
I don't want to be silly on this, but do we have to have somebody withdraw their motion and second on that first?
No,
Thank-
we,
No? Okay.
no, it's okay.
Okay.
We're good. All right. Motion to approve van and bus contracts as presented, item 13.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Eckerd,
Yes.
Mr. Franco,
Yes.
Mrs. Goebel,
Yes.
Dr. O'Sherrick,
Yes.
Dr. Perbola,
Yes.
Mr. Farr,
Yes.
Mrs. Arnold.
Yes. And appointment of a nominating committee. This has, the last several years, been Board Member Director Bennett, Lori Bennett. She's not here tonight, but I did speak with her earlier today. She would be happy to chair this committee again. And she has requested that the other two appointments to that committee to serve with her be Director Franco and Director Goebel. So this will be the nominating committee for the 2026 Board President, Vice President. With that, do we have any additional public comments? If you're coming up to give comment, please refresh. It's 4 minutes, and look over the guidelines for giving public comment.
Well, I'll go through my usual passing of former employees. Bob Robinson, Karen Franklin, Gary Cobb, and he lost his wife passed 2 days after he did. And then another young one, Holly, this belonged to you, Joanna Hutchins from your class.
Yep.
And I had brought up to administration, I hope they've got it straightened out now, the blinking lights throughout town. The ones on 29 were left on all summer. And then I've caught them on during the weekends and not during the week when they should be on. I hope by now that they got them straightened out. Now, like I said, you want to look at page 142 in the board book with the list for the tennis courts. How come we paid over $28,000 to have the fence taken away? Did it go to a junkyard? Do we have any paperwork where it went? Did it go to a landfill? Or did the contractors just mosey it on and sell it on their own? And the same thing with the receipts for, I don't have that on here, the dirt that they hauled out. That was a lot more money than that. Where did it go? Do we have paperwork to back up for that kind of an expense? Before, we've always kept fences like that from when we did work, and then we sold them at auctions. It would have been a plus, not a minus. And then, this I seen after graduation. Your graduation booklet you had for graduation night, it had the last half of the alphabet of the kids twice and didn't have the first half of the kids listed. But I've asked different times and it just, nobody, I don't know, it just goes beyond and goes down the road. But I'll tell you what I think. I think the sooner this district gets rid of Dewey, the better off they'll be. That's my personal opinion. Thanks.
Thanks, Bill. Is there any other public comment on any items, agenda or none? Come on up to the, state your name and your municipality, and then you just give your comment.
Good evening. My name is Anya Tribes. I'm a parent of Matvey DeLeo. He is in Mrs. Drangel's class. I'm not sure if this is, I think I missed my time to ask these questions, but we are wondering, I'm a representative of all the parents of Mrs. Drangel, and we are wondering if Mrs. Cresswell, I believe, is listed on personal report, if she is for us, if this is confirmed, and if she is till the end of the year.
I'd be happy to answer that. Mrs. Carly Cresswell, who was in the book, yes, that is for Mrs. Drungel. And Mrs. Drungel is supposed to come back at the start of the fourth quarter. But we did appoint Ms. Cresswell for the remainder of the school year.
Okay.
But if Ms. Drungel does come back, assuming that, she has a medical issue, assuming that that she's good, then we will find, we will utilize Carly in a different capacity.
Okay.
But yes, that is Carly's responsibility. She will be assigned to Mrs. Drungel's classroom until Mrs. Drungel returns.
Okay, well, that's wonderful to hear, because in the last couple of weeks, our class been kind of in a limbo, and the information, the communication, I'm a representative of all the parents of Mrs. Drungel's, and we've been frustrated with the lack of communication of what's actually being done, and we were not informed that our class was split up among other classes as a parents. Like, we didn't know how to prepare our kids for that. I think this week it happened. So we would really, really wish there was more communication about what's being done.
Okay, understood. I mean, the day the class was split, it's because we did not have a substitute. And I'm going to tell you, even with Ms. Cresswell being assigned, if she takes a day off, that may happen again.
Okay.
I mean, right now we have about 30 subs that work for us, 30 substitutes, but they don't all choose to work every day. If they don't take a job, there's really not a lot of options. I don't disagree with one word you're saying. I don't disagree at all. Unfortunately, we had 1 day notice that this was occurring. And, we had one young lady that was in there about a week and a half.
Right. And the kids, I got the feedback that the kids really liked her, and then unfortunately she had to leave,
Yes, but I'm going to tell you that there was, you seem very kind. I don't want to say this is you, but I know that there was a parent and a grandparent of a student in there that gave her an extremely difficult time. And I'm not going to get into the details of that, but, and I appreciate you saying that, because I also think that young lady did an exceptional job.
Oh, she was great.
I agree.
Just the feedback from my son and feedback from other moms from their kids, yes.
I agree. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah. We were kind of sad that she left after a week, but...
Me too.
Yes.
Me too.
And we've been in the limbo, but we are happy that we found Ms. Cresswell.
Yes.
And I assume once she starts, there will be a date where we can come and meet her.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep, you could speak, I mean, Mr. Castellani would be happy to speak with you. I'm sure you recognize him.
Right.
But I mean, he'd be happy to talk to you about any of your concerns or about the timeline. Absolutely. Once we get Ms. Cresswell in and we kind of get her feet wet a little bit, we'll absolutely invite parents in. She's excited. I think the kids are going to love her. She's high energy. I think it's going to be a very good experience. I'm excited to have her. A couple of years ago, she was at the primary center. She student taught there. So we're excited to welcome her back.
So she has experience with all the policies and the program, curriculum for the PC. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And I would encourage any parents, not just to this, because we are having a lot of staffing changes across the district as people are in and out for different reasons. Give these new staffers some grace as they're figuring out how to run their classrooms, with these parents and these kids and these things. Let's do our level best not to scare anybody away.
Right.
So, yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anya.
Do we have any other public comment? Any board comment? Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.